In this video, we will be learning how to subtract mixed numbers, and in some cases, we are going to have to rename the first number in order to subtract. Our first question is 16 2/3 minus 7 2/5. So we're going to start in this box by finding the least common denominator of 3 and 5. So if we list those out, we are going to quickly see that the least common denominator is 15. So we're going to go about changing our fractions so that they have common denominators. That final denominator, we want that to be 15. So we're going to find two equivalent fractions for 2/3 and 2/5. Just like we've done in our past videos, this should be a review. Okay, so our two new fractions are going to be 10/15 minus 6/15. Those have common denominators, so we can go ahead and subtract these. 10 minus 6 is 4, and our denominator stays the same. Just like in our other video adding mixed numbers, we're going to just subtract here our whole numbers. So 16 minus 7 is 9. Then in our final box, we will piece together our whole number and our fraction. So 9 4/15 is the correct answer for this problem. Okay, here's our next problem. We have 7 1/4 minus 2 3/4. So the problem with this question is that our first fraction, 1/4, is smaller than our second fraction, 3/4. So when we get down to this box and we're subtracting our fractions, we can't do 1/4 minus 3/4 because this is a smaller fraction. So what we need to do is we need to take our first number and we need to rename it so that it has a bigger fraction. And we practiced this in the video renaming mixed numbers, the video right before this one. So we're going to take 7 1/4 and we're going to rename it. So I'm going to change 7 to 6 4/4. Why am I doing 4/4? Because our denominator is 4. So we want a whole to be 4 out of 4. So now I've changed 7 to 6 4/4. Those are the same things because 6 plus another whole would still be 7. So I've changed 7 to 6 4/4, and I'm going to add in the 1/4 that I had here. And this new number is going to be 6 and 4 plus 1 is 5/4. 6 5/4. So my new problem, if I rewrite it, is going to be 6 5/4 minus 2 3/4. So I'm going to quickly erase the fractions we had here. And now we can go about solving this problem. So our denominators in our new problem are 4 and 4, so we can skip finding least common denominator. We can skip making equivalent fractions. So in this box, we're just going to subtract our fractions, 5/4 minus 3/4. Notice now that first fraction is bigger, so we can subtract, and we get 2/4. Now we're going to have to reduce and simplify. We can divide by 2 over 2 to make this final fraction 1/2. In this box down here, we're subtracting our whole numbers. 6 minus 2 is 4. And in our final box, we're piecing our whole number and our fraction back together. So 4 1/2 is our final answer. Okay, here's our next problem. We have 9 minus 5 5/7. It's going to be kind of hard to subtract 9 minus 5 5/7 because we don't have two fractions. We have two whole numbers, but we're missing a fraction in this number. So we're going to rename 9 to have a fraction. So I'm going to rename 9 as 8 and, thinking about my denominator here, 7/7. 8 plus 7/7 still equals 9. It's an equivalent mixed number for 9. So now my new problem is 8 7/7 minus our other fraction, 5 5/7. We can skip this step because we already have common denominators. We can skip this step. So we're just going to, in this box, subtract 7/7 minus 5/7, which is going to be 2/7. In this box, we're subtracting our whole numbers, 8 minus 5. I took my 8 and my 5. 8 minus 5 is 3. And then in our final box, we're going to piece together our whole number and our fraction. 3 2/7 is the final answer. Here's our last problem for today's video, 7 1/5 minus 3 3/4. Right away I noticed that 1/5 is smaller than 3/4. And another way I can check that is I can put 1/5 and I can put 3/4 and I can use my comparing fractions trick. So 4 times 1 is 4 and 5 times 3 is 15. So that tells me right away that this fraction over here is going to be smaller. So we can't do 1/5 minus 3/4. If we got down to this box and we tried to subtract 1/5 minus 3/4, we're going to get a negative fraction, which doesn't work for us. So looking at 7 1/5, that first number, I'm going to go ahead and rename that. I'm going to change my 7, and I'm going to bring it down to 6 5/5, because that's what our denominator is, so our whole would be 5 out of 5. 6 5/5 is equivalent to 7. And then I can't forget to add in this 1/5 here that I still had in the previous mixed number. So our new number is going to be 6 6/5. And now our new problem is 6 6/5 minus 3 3/4. So I'm just going to box this so that you guys can see this is our new problem that we're going to solve. 6 6/5 minus 3 3/4. So I'm starting in this box, finding my least common denominator for 5 and 4. If I count by 5s, 10, 15, 20, I know that 4 is going to go into 20. So 20 is our least common denominator. We're going to rename our fractions. So we have 6/5, 3/4. We want those to have final denominators of 20. So I'm going to multiply this fraction by 4. And I'm going to multiply this fraction by 5. So our two new fractions that we can actually subtract are 24/20 minus 15/20. 24, take away 15, we're going to have to borrow. 14 minus 5 is 9. So our denominator stays the same, and this is reduced, so that's all done here. In this box, I'm going to subtract our whole numbers, which is our 6 minus 3. And finally, I'm going to piece together my whole number and my fraction. And that is our final answer.